You're welcome to the program from the National Assembly. I am Lami Ali. We bring to you the debate of the Senate on a motion seeking to update the laws of the Federation of Nigeria. The motion was moved by Senator Kakashehu Lawan from Borno State. The lawmakers, in adopting the resolution, emphasize that the non-revision of the laws of the Federation of Nigeria, last conducted in 2004, has led to a situation in which several laws enacted from January 2003 to date remain excluded from the compilation. The motion was raised by Senator Kakashehu Lawan.
The compilation of the laws of the Federation of Nigeria is carried out under the authority of the Attorney General of the Federation, subject to the approval of the National Assembly through an act. Informed that the last and extant compilation of the laws of Federation of Nigeria was in 2004, which reckon with all statutes existing in the Federation as of 31st December 2002. Further informed that the laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004 was subsequently approved by the National Assembly through the revised edition Laws of the Federation of Nigeria Act 2007, which repealed the revised edition Laws of the Federation of Nigeria Act 1990. Aware that the statutes in the Laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004 were enacted in different years before and after Nigerians' independence, even though they are all cited as NFN 2004, which consists of 16 volumes, with each volume being made up of several statutes organized in an alphanumeric order. Further aware that there was an attempt to revise the laws of the Federation of Nigeria in 2010, but this effort had no legal framework of the National Assembly approving it. Worried that the laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004 has not been revised 19 years after, with the implication that the several laws enacted in Nigeria from 1st January 2003 till date remain excluded from the compilation. Further worried that the continued non-revision of the laws of Federation of Nigeria 2004 has not only left numerous statutes out of the compilation, but also retained many repealed statutes with the attendant confusions and other negative impacts. The several federal statutes leads to dearth of knowledge of many existing laws on the part of Nigerians, especially students, lecturers, researchers, lawyers, legislators, and judges, amongst others. Convinced that revision of the laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004 is long overdue, as such will be in the interest of democratic governance in Nigeria to commence the revision process without further delay. Resolved, the Senate is called to resolve. 1. Urge the Senate to mandate its Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters to immediately interface with the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation to initiate the process of revising the laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004, and urge the Senate to give further directives as deemed expedient and appropriate in the circumstances. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I so present and move accordingly. Thank you, sir.
Drives this motion is a need for us to broaden access to justice. We may have the gamut of laws in this country, but we need to explore beyond that and explore towards having the access to justice. We know that our society is dynamic. What defined our laws in the past may not be the same now. So it becomes very critical that we review the gamut of our laws from time to time. The larger intent is that way we broaden access to justice. It is not enough for us to have access to law. We must have access to justice. But beyond that, it is that we must publicize the gamut of our laws. Many Nigerians are in the dark about the content, the structure, and indeed the context of our laws. Through this intervention, it would be easier for us to publicize the gamut of our laws to Nigerians. Viewed within this context, I'm fully in support of this motion, given the nature of our society. The society continues to evolve, and as society evolves, there's need to have some adjustments. This will deepen the tissue of our jurisprudence. So this motion is good, not just for law, it is also good for our jurisprudence. But the larger significance is that through this intervention, it becomes easier to have access to justice. We must have access to justice for us to enjoy our democracy. And we must also ensure that our people know the content of our laws. Viewed from this backdrop, I support this motion. It is well-timed, and truly, it will enrich our law and jurisprudence. Thank you.
Looking at the global phenomenon today, the name of the game is e-commerce. All over the world, transactions are made electronics. And those nations that have refused to tally with what the world bargains lives to fight another day, and they live to regret it. Compilation of laws. The compilation of the laws has to do with every segment that the law at present has not captured. If you look at Kaka's bill, it brings to bear the gaps that the present laws have actually not met. As a lawyer, I'm sure he has taken his time to do this research. And the best thing for us as a parliament is to take this bill to the second reading. It is there that I'm sure interested public participants will be called to look at it, revisit it, and bring possible amendments to it. So I believe this is a very important bill that the Senate President and this chamber should encourage. Thank you.
We can now go into the prayers. Prayer 1, mandate the Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters to immediately interfere with the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation to initiate the process of revisiting the laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004. Those who are in support of this prayer 1 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 2, give such further directives as deemed expedient and appropriate in the circumstances. Those who are in support of this prayer 2 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Let me thank distinguished Senator Kaka for this motion, and also thank all our distinguished colleagues for their contributions. There is no doubt that we have different versions of the Nigerian laws on the streets of Abuja being sold. We even have different parts of the Constitution, and sometimes even the subtitles are wrong. And all sorts of people are just printing these things. Even most of the amendments that have been initiated in the Senate, passed and signed into Acts of Parliament by Mr. President are not reflected in some of the things that they are selling on the road. So it will be good for us to revisit and put these things together for the benefit of Nigerians, and particularly their lordships in the last judges conference, ongoing judges conference, even pointed this out, that it's important that we do the necessary things, and then of course gazette them and then forward it to them, because sometimes the amendments are not reflected in the Acts of Parliament, and they have no ways of knowing, because these things are not forwarded to them. So I've discussed with the clerk of National Assembly that must be done, and so the compilation of this is very important. So it's a very important bill, and I urge the Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights, and other matters to work closely with your Office of the Attorney General to bring about the reform in our laws. Thank you.
Senate passed for second reading a bill seeking the reenactment of the Dishonored Checks Offences Act, sponsored by Senator Sunday Karimi.
I hereby move that a bill for an act to repeal and reenact the Dishonest Checks Act 1977 and to reenact the Dishonest Check Offences Act 2023 and connected matters herewith be read for the second time. Mr. President, my colleagues, I hereby seek your support for this bill. The new bill, Section 9, seeks to improve the legal regime on dishonored checks in Nigeria in order to facilitate trade and investment in Nigeria. The Eastern law suffers some defects, which this bill seeks to amend. Such defects are limited or inexhaustive grounds for dishonoring a check, in bracket lack of insufficient funds. This bill seeks to expand the ground to include deliberately drawing checks on account known to be dormant or a non-existent account, or irregular mandate, and where the value of the check exceeds the normal amount authorized. Penalties. The Principal Act prescribes that in case of individual guilty of presenting a dot check, imprisonment of 2 years without option of fine, and in case of a company, a fine of 5,000 naira. The fine stipulated as the penalty for dishonored check in the Eastern Act is too small, and the new bill recommends an increase. In this bill, it is proposed that 2 years imprisonment without an option of fine is too stringent. An option of fine of 500,000 and an order of restitution are now alternative to imprisonment. While in the case of a company, a fine is proposed to be increased to 1 million. For a case of small company, for larger company, 5 million. Limitation period of presenting a check is also increased in the new act. In the old act, there are 3 months limitation period. I'm proposing here that the limitation period be increased to 6 months in consonance with Section 74 of the Bill of Exchange Act and current banking practice. Courts with jurisdiction to try offences of dishonored check. In the old act, it is only the Federal High Court that can try offences on dishonored check. I'm proposing in the new act that the State High Court and Magistrate Court be allowed to try offences related to dishonored check. Order of restitution. It is fair to compensate victims of dishonored check. The Principal Act does not make such provision. So in this act, I'm providing for restitution as one of the means for redress for victims of the crime. The inclusion of order of restitution in this act is in line with the recent reform of the administration of criminal justice in Nigeria, where restitution and compensation of victims of a crime, among other are recognized as form of redress. Service of notice of dishonor. Section 1 of the Act provides that where a check is presented for payment by the drawer, beneficiary of the check or person whose name appears on the check for presentation, it does not provide for notice of dishonor by drawee or the drawer. This leaves a vacuum as to the issue of notifying the drawer about dishonor check. If the payee decide to institute legal action against the drawer should be given an opportunity to repay the check value immediately. Such an opportunity shall be given by a notice in writing. The drawer of the check ought to be given a notice in writing and an opportunity to regularize the anomaly on the dishonor check. This bill make provision for service of notice of in writing, requiring to redeem within 7 days from the date of receipt of the notice of dishonor check. Mr. President, my colleague, it is in my view that this old act, which has been in existence since 1977, is due for a repeal so that we can take into consideration the banned practices as of today. So I call on my colleagues to please support this bill for second reading. Thank you.
This bill sponsored by Senator Karimi is apt and germane, especially against the backdrop of the constitutional responsibility that we have as Parliament, as Section 4 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, which gave us the exclusive power to legislate for the peace, order, and good governance of the country, as well as the fact that our laws are not meant to be static. Our laws are supposed to be organic and then change with the changing nature of society, to take into consideration both the objective and subjective realities that is prevalent in the society at any given point in time. So what this bill seeks to do is to aptly capture our responsibility of legislation for peace, order, and good governance, and also to change, amend laws to bring them in tandem with objective and subjective realities of that is prevalent in the society. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, distinguished senators, this bill seeks to confer more jurisdiction to state high courts and magistrates as opposed to the original jurisdiction, original provision in the bill that confers jurisdiction on federal high court. This bill now seeks to extend jurisdiction to state high courts and magistrates court, thereby bringing justice closer to our people and then making delivery of justice seamless in accordance with the amended Administration of Criminal Justice Act. And then, Mr. President, this bill also seeks to amend the penalty provision so that there will be an option of fine. The extant law only provides for imprisonment without an option of fine. This bill now seeks to amend it to provide an option of fine, and also the penalty provision, to increase the penalty provision in tandem with the inflationary trend that is happening in the country. So, Mr. President, distinguished senators, I support the second reading of this bill.
Thank you. My only question here, I think, with regards to what you may term as small companies or big companies, there must be some clarity. What do you refer to as a small company and what refers to as a big company? I think it needs to be clear. Yes.
I rise to support this very all-important motion in respect of a bill, in respect of dishonor check. Dishonor check is a criminal offense an act against the state, and it destroys business ethics. It makes things to move very slowly, and it castigates the integrity of our monetary system. I think this bill is very detailed. In fact, we should desire to eliminate completely dishonest check. In United Arab Emirates, if you give a dishonest check, you are liable to life imprisonment. In UK, it's a very, very serious offense, and it undermines business integrity, like I said, for people to be encouraged to give dishonest check. So without wasting your time, Mr. Senate President, this is all important bill, and I think this Senate will be remembered in history for moving very quickly to arrest the milice and eradicate completely the use of dishonest check by people in the society. This also is one of the moves by the Senate to fight against corruption. Because to use dishonest check, Mr. President, is a corruption act, and we must reduce and remove this praxis from our own system. So I so support this all-important bill, Mr. Senate President. Thank you.
I also lend my voice and to congratulate the mover of this bill, that the issue of dishonored checks actually impedes and reduces the trend of economy. I support it wholeheartedly, but again, I'm looking at the issue of the 3 months period within which, the 6 months period. I believe that 6 months is too much a time to be giving to anyone to hold a check. The drawer, the payee, and the drawer, and the maker of the check and the receiver of the check both have some responsibilities. For one to be given a check and hold it for as long as this period of time also does not augur well for the transaction for which the check was presented. So I am suggesting that the period for which anyone can hold a check should exceed 3 months. Should not exceed 3 months at all. 3 months should be sufficient. Otherwise, when you give a check, and the check is with an individual for over 3 months, and such account is dynamic, as we say, it's an account that receives money and also disburses money. It will not be fair for the drawer of that check to have given a check and then the check has not been presented to honor for a period more than 3 months. That's my contribution. Thank you, Mr. President.
Contributions to the debate so far, and to quickly ask those in favor that this bill be now read a second time, say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The clerk of the Senate.
A bill for an act to repeal and reenact the Dishonored Checks Offences Act 1977, to make it an offense anywhere in Nigeria, to induce the delivery of property or service, or to purport to settle a lawful obligation by means of a check, which, when presented within a reasonable time, is dishonored on the grounds of no funds or insufficient funds were standing to the credit of the drawer of the check, or on other grounds provided in this Act, and for related matters 2023, second reading.
The Dishonored Checks Offences Act 1977, to make it an offense anywhere in Nigeria, to induce the delivery of property or service, or to purport to settle a lawful obligation by means of check, which when presented within a reasonable time is dishonored on the grounds of no funds or insufficient funds standing to the credit of the drawer of the check, or other grounds provided in this Act and for related matters therewith. 2023. Second reading taken. Distinguished colleagues, this bill is now referred to the Committee on Banking, Insurance, and other financial institutions to report back to the Senate in 2 weeks.
Also passed for second reading is the bill sponsored by Senator Saliu Mustafa, which seeks to facilitate the use of information in electronic form to conduct transactions.
The use of information in electronic form for conducting transactions in Nigeria and for connected purposes, 2023 SB 94. Mr. President, the bill for an act to facilitate the use of information in electronic form for conducting transactions in Nigeria for connected purposes, 2023. It was read for the first time in this hallowed chamber on Tuesday, September 2003. The bill seeks to provide a legal and regulatory framework for conducting transactions using electronic or related media, protect the rights of the consumers and other parties in electronic transactions and services. The bill further seeks to protect personal data and facilitate electronic commerce in Nigeria. Mr. President, the justification for this bill, distinguished colleagues, in the present computer age and with the globalization of marketplace, which has made buying and selling without boundary possible, the use of electronic transaction in our day-to-day life cannot be relegated. Electronic transaction has become the most effective way of conducting business in Nigeria. Today, even amongst the uneducated and rural populace, for an economy to prosper, electronic transactions are inevitable. The rate of e-commerce in our economy is growing with an expected peak at a estimated $9.02 billion. The rate of e-commerce in our economy is growing with an expected peak of about $9.2 billion. In 2023, and the need to protect the personal data of users and the rights of consumers and other parties using this medium of transaction cannot be overemphasized. The bill is in line with the excellent Central Bank of Nigerian economic policy to make Nigeria a cashless society and reduce the associated hazards of carrying large amounts of cash. The current statistics on use of e-commerce is expected to increase significantly by 14.6% in 2023, with Nigeria contributing to the worldwide growth rate by 9.6% this year. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the popularity of mobile shopping is an all-time high, and one of the barriers to the growth of e-commerce in Nigeria is the lack of legal and regulatory support, amongst other issues which the bill seeks to address. It is expected that Nigeria will benefit majorly from electronic transaction with increased sales, competitive advantage, customer loyalty, increased automation process, extended application of new technologies, and better knowledge management, amongst others, with the passage of this bill. Mr. President, e-commerce made it easy for SMEs to receive payments from customers, and this ease of payment processing not only helps SMEs to...
About this through personal explanation yesterday, that the Senate utilized this rule under Section 1B, that in all cases not provided for in the standing order or by sessional or other orders or practices of the Senate shall by resolution regulate its proceedings. And so the Senate by resolution decided that it was still necessary for us to utilize this man who spent 12 good years here and spent 10 years as a governor in one of the states in Nigeria, a foundation politician, and from what you are hearing, an icon of sports, a man who committed himself to the service of humanity. So for the past 72 years, 72 hours, all of us in this hallowed chamber are mourning, and we are still mourning the passing away of Governor Senator Bukar Abba. And so we decided to give ourselves the opportunity to say one or two things about him that many Nigerians did not know. So let me invite one of his classmates, distinguished Senator Yahaya, to say a word.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am
The President of the Senate, Senator Godswill Akpabio, is presiding over the day's proceedings, and at the moment, lawmakers are eulogizing the late former governor of Yobe State and a former member of the Nigerian Senate for 12 years, Senator Bukar Abba Ibrahim, who died some 3 days ago.
In Ahmad Bello University. Although I graduated a bit earlier, 1974, he graduated 75. But he was an exceptional engineering student, and somebody who had a very, very solid background in the sciences. We always communicate and congregate through our mutual friend, Lawal Batagrawa, and several others. We used to take visits from Zaria to Kaduna, to go to Borno to meet him. He was a commissioner in Borno State government at that time during the military. Bukar Abba did not come out in politics to be a governor. He was identified to be director campaign organization for Ibrahim Ali. And somehow, in the middle of those political times, the turbulence in the military politics, states were created. And then when Yobe was created out of Borno, he found himself, the only person standing. So we told him, why don't you go for it? He went for it, and a lot of us were quite surprised that he even got elected because, Bukar had virtually nothing. And for politics of those days and even now, people without resources, hardly benefit at all. But that shows you the character of the person. Like Senator Goje said, is a very, very simple person. You find him with almost at home with ordinary people. You go into a crowd, he is a very silent person. Unless you look very closely, you will not even know that he is around, even while he was a governor. He's a very, very prudent and a very disciplined person. Highly disciplined. In fact, when some people approach him, for those being rich, Bukar always say that, how much do you need? His thing is about basic survival. Like people going to say, what he has goes out. What he gets goes out. Sometimes, even while he was a governor, he used to visit charity journey, and they lodged in lodge at that time in near my house in area 11. So I always walked down to go and see them. There was a time when he was governor and he had no cover inside his pocket. He had to borrow money from me, who was a civil servant. What you have in Bukar Abba. It is a memory for me, having lost one of the best friends that I had in my life. I can remember, when during 1993 election and the SGP, I resigned my position and joined politics and vied for the position. He was the one who actually instigated that I should vie for the position of the secretary of the Social Democratic Party, which the DSP was talking about. I contested against Lamido and this Daura, Kabir Daura and others. And it was quite turbulent at that time. It was Bukar Abba who held the course. And during the time when there was this real fight, in the SDP on Abiola presidency, I remember I was the secretary of the committee that was set up to reconcile all the irreconcilable people after the Jos Convention. We were defeated because we were in the Kingebe faction. So we came and congregated in Abuja, and Bukar was one of the members of the committee. And we were there. And the issue came up, where do we go after the defeat that we suffered in the hands of Abiola? Bukar and some of us insisted that, look, we should not allow ourselves to be marginalized. The military actually at that time did not want to leave. So they wanted to put a wedge in the political firmament. Bukar was one of the people who suggested that we join Abiola and get him to accept Kingibe as his vice presidential candidate. And that's how June 12th came. Without those decisions, which Bukar and others, Bukar and others made out, there would never have been June 12th, which is the foundation on which this government is standing on. So, Mr. President, while I eulogize and commiserate with you, my friends and the family of late Bukar Abba, I pray to Allah, like all of us, we are all on our way there. I pray to Allah to bless his soul and give comfort to the people he left behind. Thank you and God bless you.
Distinguished Senator Victor Ume.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Senator Victor Ume. I represent Anambra Central Senatorial District. Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me an opportunity to contribute to this tribute session for this great Nigerian, late Senator Bukar Abba Ibrahim. Mr. President, it's not all the time that every good thing a man did in his lifetime will be remembered. But today, I'm very happy to stand up to pay tribute to this great Nigerian. We were in the same 8th Senate with Bukar Ibrahim, Senator. And there was one thing that he did that endeared him to me. There was a day the Senate considered the report for the composition of the board members of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Mr. President, in that report, the Southeast had no representative in the proposed board. That report was considered by the Senate. I remember I raised an objection to the confirmation of those nominations. That incident threw the Senate into a rowdy session, and eventually we went into a closed-door session. When we got there, Senator Bukar Ibrahim was the first person to stand up to condemn the list. He condemned the exclusion of the Southeast from the board of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. And he also supported that list should be rejected and sent back to the president so that the Southeast will have a representative in the commission. I was so surprised because I didn't know he was the one that would stand up to give support to the rejection of that list. So he came across to me as a man who stood for equity and fairness. He was a nationalist to the core, and he was someone who believed that every part of Nigeria must be carried along in the affairs of government. it was a rare thing to behold. So from that day, I marked him out as somebody who stood for fairness and equity. In that same day, he complained about the exclusion of Yobe State from the board of the ICPC. At the end of that session, we returned to plenary, and the Senate rejected that list and returned it to Mr. President for correction, so that the Southeast will have a member in the board. The same thing with the ICPC board that was returned, so that Yobe State will have a nominee. So he was somebody who stood for everybody. He didn't want anybody to be excluded in the affairs of government. Greatly so, in 2021, the president reconstituted that board and reflected the resolution passed by the Senate. Put somebody from the Southeast in that board, and then put somebody from Yobe State in the board of ICPC. He would have kept quiet in the normal scheme of things then, but he said that was unfair. He stood his ground. So today that we are talking about him, I feel so complete that I'm given a chance to talk about this man. A very quiet person, like Senator Yahya Abdullahi said. He will never make himself noticed in any gathering. Very intelligent, a quantity surveyor at that. He will study every situation and make well-informed contribution to the debates. Anytime he was given chance to speak. So now that he has passed on, I want to say that Nigeria has lost somebody who has great respect to national unity. Because when you carry everybody along in the affairs of government, there will be unity. So I want to say that he was a good example of somebody who wished Nigeria to be truly united, so that nobody will be left behind. Those of us who are still in the saddle, we should emulate the life of Senator Boko Abba Ibrahim, so that at any time we'll be thinking about how everybody will be accommodated and how everybody will be happy. I'm happy that you also mentioned my name yesterday among those who will be going to Yobe tomorrow or any day we elect. I'm happy to be a member of that team, to go there and pay my last respect to this man in his home state. Thank you very much. May God bless his soul.
I believe strongly that the speech of distinguished Senator Victor Ome has more or less added any missing gap that we had in the discussion and the eulogy of this great man, distinguished Senator Boko Abba of blessed memory. But I noticed that the former speaker and former governor, even though much younger, may have had one or two things to do with later Abba, Boko Ibrahim. So, distinguished Senator Tambowa, you are the last to speak, and then we go to the next item because of time.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. My respected colleagues, I remain Aminu Waziri Tambuwal, representing Sokoto South Senatorial District. Mr. President, I indicated my interest to make some remarks on this legendary politician, Boko Abba Ibrahim, of blessed memory, whom I first encountered when he was a sitting governor of Yobe State, when in our party then, the ANPP, we had some issues. I was nominated and met to replace the minority leader of the House of Representatives in July of 2005, against the wish of so many power brokers in the ANPP, of course, including Senator Adamu Alero, and a number of the ANPP governors were opposed to my emergence. I reminded your elder brother yesterday, Donald Etebet, his role of trying to stop me from being so recognized by the leadership of the House. Then he was chairman of the ANPP. But when I and my colleagues who were empaneled to be the new leadership of the ANPP caucus in the House of Representatives traveled to Yobe, Damatru, we met this humble, gentle, amiable, and people-loving governor of Yobe State, Bukar Abba Ibrahim. He received us warmly, and we told him our story of how we emerged as leaders of the caucus. He immediately embraced us and put words across to some of his colleagues governors to accept us and allow us to perform our functions as new leaders of the minority caucus of the House of Representatives. That was my first close contact with Bukar Abba Ibrahim. But before he passed on, and before his health failed, he came to Sokoto on a visit. Then I was still governor of Sokoto State. And he brought some copies of the book he authored, Politics, is the title of the book. And it was the story of Bukar Abba Ibrahim, how he grew up from a humble background and got to where he got to. Very impactful life. He meant, and indeed, a leader that was loved by his people. Virtually every politician that you see of today from Yobe State had gone through the Bukar Abba Ibrahim School of Politics. Virtually all of the technocrats of today have gone through Bukar Abba Ibrahim. He lived a life of legacy. He lived a very simple life dedicated to humanity and service to his people, the Talakaos of Yobe State. May his soul rest in perfect peace. May Allah have mercy on him. Thank you very much, President of the Senate.
Thank you, the very distinguished Senator Alero, distinguished Senator Wamako, distinguished Senator Danjuma Goje, distinguished Senator Oju Sakalo, and all our colleagues who contributed to bringing this eulogy before the Nigerian Senate today. And I want to thank all those who have made contributions. You see, death is something that is appointed unto man. Every one of us will die one day. But what will be remembered for will be the lives that we touched and what we left behind. So I feel very highly emotional about the contributions of this great man, distinguished Senator Bukar Abba Ibrahim. There are many missing gaps here today. Even his life as a great sportsman, his contributions to sports, the formation of the hockey team that won many laurels both nationally and internationally for Nigeria, his simplicity even in life and in governance, and even this last speech from my brother, Senator Governor Tamboa, showing that in his early years as minority leader that he was always used to challenging the establishment and emerging. The same thing he did when he was when he became a speaker. He challenged us, and he wore Niger Delta cap and entered through the fence and became the speaker. So it shows that this is something that is in his DNA. But I thank God that my late brother, Bukar Abba Ibrahim, accepted you. And I'm sure that was the end of all disagreements, because he was so highly respected, even in NPP then, that when he accepted you, that was the end of all disagreements. So it is good that you brought this up, and now I know you better. So I want to thank all of us for all we have said about this great man. And I assure you that the Senate has a proper record of the contributions of this great soul. 12 years in these hollow chambers as a senator, 10 years as a governor, unprecedented, and a man who lived for the people. He did not die leaving mansions behind. He did not die leaving Rolls Royce and exotic cars behind. He died a simple man. He lived a simple life and lived for humanity. And if you take note, you will notice where he died. He actually died in the Holy Land of Saudi Arabia. And this, for me, it gives me goose pimples that yes, indeed, that God accepted his life so well that God even chose where he should die, where the Holy Prophet was born. May his soul rest in peace. So we'll just go straight into the prayers. We had observed a minute silence yesterday in his honor, but I think it's not too much if we do so again today. That is by way of prayer one. Because for him to have served 10 years as governor, 12 years as a senator, I think it deserves all the eulogy we can and all the respect we can give to him, even in death. So if it is the wish of the Senate that prayer one be upheld, those in support say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer two. Prayer three, actually. We have already a strong delegation led by distinguished Senator Alero to visit the family and condole with the good people of Yobe State through the government of Yobe State. Though this is already been agreed upon by the Senate, but for reaffirmation, those in support say aye, those against say nay. The ayes have it. May we rise once again to pay respects. Yes. Prayer one is about the immortalization of Senator Boko Haram by renaming an educational institution in his honor. I don't know whether this should be done by the government of Yobe State or whether it should be done by the federal government. But either is okay. Those in support of prayer one say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. So let's observe one more time. By the soul of late distinguished Senator Abubakar Ibrahim, rest in peace. Amen. Yes, on this is something very short. Distinguished Senator Sonny Marshall. Otherwise, we have service chiefs that we are taking by 12:30. Can I just quickly say something? Let me know.
2 minutes, Mr. President. Sunday, Marshal Khatum. I represent the people of Kaduna South Territorial District. I come under Order 42, matter of personal explanation. It's an announcement of the election of Mrs. Abigail Marshall Khatum as Lord Mayor-elect of this Leeds City Council. With the kind permission of the President of the Senate and the indulgence of my colleagues, Senators, I wish to formally notify you of the election of my wife as the Lord Mayor-elect of the City of Leeds in the United Kingdom, which took place on the 17th of January 2024. The implication of our election is that I will consequently become the Lord Mayor Consort, which is a ceremonial role. It is Mr. President, sir, I need your protection. I need your protection, Mr. President. It is worthy of It is worthy of note, Mr. President, that she is not just the first Nigerian to be elected into that position, but the first African in over 129 years of the city's existence. The mayoral inauguration is scheduled to hold at the Civic Hall of the Leeds City Council on the 23rd May 2024 at 4:30 p.m. All senators are hereby cordially invited to witness the ceremony. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I saw
off your mic. Distinguished colleagues, distinguished Senator Adaramodu, you are the Senate spokesman. Please, immediately after this, you have to let the world know that we now have a Lord Mayor consort in the Senate. So, distinguished, noted, okay. So, distinguished Senator Sunday Marshall Kartu, even without speaking, because you came under personal explanation, I think the Senate has noted with gratitude and what God has done for Nigeria and for your family, that today we have a Lord Mayor of Leeds and the first Nigerian to be so elected in 129 years, or the first African to hold that position. And even to further note that we have a Lord Mayor consort sitting amongst us. And I don't know, because maybe the Senate may decide to agree that you come with your official ceremonial dress wherever you come for sittings. But we want to congratulate you and congratulate your dear wife, and the personal explanation is upheld. Senate Leader.
Mr. President, very distinguished senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the first business of the day is the presentation of a bill standing in the name of distinguished Senator Siako Yaro Anthony on the Federal College of Agriculture and Animal Husbandry Establishment Bill 2024 SB 297. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Federal College of Agriculture and Animal Husbandry Establishment Bill 2024, SB 297, first reading.
Distinguished colleagues, Federal College of Agriculture and Animal Husbandry Establishment Bill 2024, SB 297, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, the second business of the day is the presentation of a bill standing in the name of distinguished Senator Nwoye Tony on the Federal Medical Centers Act Amendment Bill 2024, SB 327. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Federal Medical Centers Act Amendment Bill 2024, SB 327, first reading.
Distinguished colleagues, Federal Medical Center Act Amendment Bill 2024, SB 327, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, very distinguished senators, the third business of the day is the presentation of a bill standing in the name of distinguished Senator Abiru Mukail Adetokunbo on the Inflation Reduction Program Special Provisions Bill 2024 SB 336. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Inflation Reduction Program Special Provisions Bill 2024, SB 336, first reading.
Distinguished colleagues, Inflation Reduction Program Special Provisions Bill 2024, SB 336, first reading taken. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the fourth business of the day is the presentation of a bill standing in the name of distinguished Senator Yao Sahabi Al-Haji on the Child Rights Act Amendment Bill 2024, SB 337. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Child Rights Act Amendment Bill 2024, SB 337, first reading.
Distinguished colleagues, Child Rights Act Amendment Bill 2024, SB 337, first reading taken. The Senate Leader.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the fifth business of the day is the presentation of a bill standing in the name of distinguished Senator Etim Basi Aniekan on the Agricultural Research Council Act Amendment Bill 2024, SB 338. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Agricultural Research Council Act Amendment Bill 2024, SB 338, first reading.
Distinguished colleagues, Agricultural Research Council Act Amendment Bill 2024, SB 338, first reading taken. Without the Senate.
Thank you, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues. The only order of the day is the security briefing by the service chiefs to brief this distinguished Senate as elected representatives of the Nigerian people on the general security situation in the country. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, you will recall that the Senate resolved to invite the service chiefs for an interactive session with a view to resolving the insecurity situation plaguing the country. Mr. President, distinguished senators, in order to carry out this exercise, in conformity with our Standing Order 17 on floor privileges, I will move two motions. One, I move that the Senate do resolve into the Committee of the Whole in closed session, and I will wait for the minority leader to second it before I go to the second motion. I thank you.
In closed session? Are we in closed session? Well, I thought we should resolve into Committee of the Whole first, and thereafter we can discuss closed session after we have received. In fact, the other motion should actually be that we should open the chambers for strangers to come in.
Well, Mr. President, that was meant to be my second motion in accordance with the chamber brief, but I, as well, might allow the second motion to come first.
So we go first into Committee of the Whole.
Well, my first motion in this regard, if I'm allowed to move, would be in respect of suspending our rules to admit the service chiefs.
So I'm saying let's take it in order of that.
Yes.
So let's first get the motion to suspend our rules in case we want strangers to come into chambers.
Well, as ably led, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, my first motion then will be to move that the Senate do admit the service chiefs and the special advisor to Mr. President on Senate matters on National Assembly matters into the Senate chamber. I so move, Mr. President.
The minority leader.
Mr. President, I rise to second the motion by the Senate leader that service chiefs be admitted into the chamber along with the special advisor to the President on National Assembly matters in the Senate. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, the Senate, having assessed the insecurity situation in the country, particularly the infiltration of bandits, kidnappers, and terrorists into the FCT and other parts of Nigeria, resolved to invite the security chiefs for briefing and for interaction today with a view to finding a lasting solution to the situation. So the Senate leader accordingly has moved that we do suspend our rules to allow strangers to approach the chambers, and this has been seconded by the minority leader. Those in support of the motion that we suspend our rules to allow strangers to approach the chambers, can you say aye? Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
Live plenary proceedings from the Senate. At this moment, the Senate has moved a motion to allow for the admittance of strangers into the chambers for the purpose of holding a meeting between the lawmakers and security chiefs over the state of insecurity in Nigeria. The service chiefs have been admitted. The chief of army staff, the chief of the air staff, and the chief of naval staff are now inside the chamber for an interaction which is going to be held behind closed door with members of the Nigerian Senate, as the lawmakers seek ways of addressing the challenge of insecurity in Nigeria, in particular the Federal Capital Territory. Motion to have this meeting with the service chiefs was adopted on the first day of plenary, that is the 30th of January 2024, when the Senate reconvened after the Christmas and New Year break. It was the first motion that was dealt with on that day of plenary. And so today we have the service chiefs in chamber for the purpose of that meeting, which seeks to address the challenge of insecurity in Nigeria. Issues of kidnappings, banditry, terrorism, and all sorts of issues that have to do with compromise of security in Nigeria are the matters that will be discussed this afternoon between the senators and service chiefs. The session will any moment now go into closed door as announced by the President of the Senate. The meeting will be held behind closed doors. So any moment now, that motion is going to come into effect for them to go into the closed door interactive session.
Oh, that is why I'm sensitive. No, they said they should do this before they go into closed door. They want us to go back. I was waiting for them to announce. Okay, I was waiting for them to announce.
Distinguished colleagues, can you settle down, please, for the business of the day? Senator Tony Nwoye, take your seat. Gentlemen of the press, can you leave us, please? Thank you. You've taken enough pictures. Thank you.
Senate further knows that Senate informed that the authorities of tertiary institutions in cohorts with some JAMB officials have reverted to the practice of provisional admissions into priced professional courses like medicine and surgery, pharmacy, law, engineering, nursing sciences, etc., with a view to shortchanging some students already offered admission in exchange for gratification. Senate also informed of the travel of one Mr. Chinyere Ekwe and other 290 other students who were admitted to study medicine and surgery at the University of Nigeria and Nsukka, but had their admission truncated on the order of JAMB for non-plausible reasons after they had completed admission processes and resumed lectures and also paid their school fees. Mrs. Ekwe, in particular, scored 291 in the 2009 UTME exams and 300 in the university post-UTME, which qualified her for the course and was subsequently admitted by the university, and she paid all necessary fees. Further informed that the said Chinyere Ekwe was transferred to the Department of Medical Laboratory Sciences on the ground that if her cumulative grade point is up to 4.5 points after the first year, which would have been transferred back to the medicine and surgery. However, despite the fact that she surpassed the 4.5 threshold, her admission status is still not yet certain as to whether she is duly admitted into a Department of Medicine and Surgery or Medical Laboratory Sciences at present. Worried that the provisional admission practice is being used as a malicious tool to exploit and frustrate intelligent young Nigerians who are children and wards of ordinary Nigerians. Also worried by the fact that these children who make good grades in the UTME and been made to pay the necessary fees undergo rigorous processes of registration, matriculation, resume lectures, and sometimes even semester exams only to be transferred to other less competitive courses by the university, conniving with JAMB officials without plausible reasons, thereby destroying their career. Concerned that the emotional trauma this unexplained cost swap bears on the victim is so devastating that is capable of leading to individual living into endless depression, loss of enthusiasm, and worse even, leading to some of the victims going into crimes. And also that uncertainty and unfair treatment as meted out by Mr. Chinyerekwe could cause, the young girl to psychological trauma. Further concerned that such unwholesome practices put our educational system in jeopardy, and Senate is hereby prayed to resolve as follows: to mandate JAMB to appear before the relevant committee, being Committee on Tertiary Institution, to resolve this lingering issue of cost swamp. Mr. President, I want to combine prayer 2 and prayer 3, which is also to summon JAMB and the University of Nigeria and Nsukka to explain the circumstances surrounding the undisclosed admission phenomenon and the career killing saga that is affecting over 291 students in the University of Nigeria. Distinguished colleagues, Mr. President, I beg of you to support this all-important motion because this has to do with the future of our children, especially the children of the poor who has nobody to speak for them. Thank you.
Sent to either the Committee on Higher Education or the Committee on Public Petitions, so that all the different institutions mentioned in this motion will be invited, because fair hearing means that all sides must be heard. Before we go to into the prayers of compelling people to do A or B or C. The reason why I'm saying this is that we know the JAMB registrar, and I really am surprised that such a weighty allegation can be made against JAMB. I also know the Vice Chancellor of the University of Nigeria and Nsukka, and these are men that I have a lot of respect, and I can vouch for their integrity. So I think, sir, that in conclusion of my remarks, that we may rather follow the path of making sure that everybody is heard through the Committee on Public Petitions.
Mr. President, this one is pointing, it's just the beginning of the whole issue. And let me state something. Before now, JAMB only conduct exams for universities, as stated in the motion. Now it is combined exam for all the universities. And no child will apply for college of education or polytechnic when it comes to exams. Everybody applies to university. And at the end, when they didn't get, they will go and make a transfer. And that's why there's pressure. The people that even are qualified for admission into medicine and other courses that are very important in this country are not getting the admission. I think we need to look at this holistically. It's not only one institution, but the entire institution and the JAMB itself and the way they conduct their exams need to be looked into, Mr. President. Thank you.
From the revelations made on this motion paper, very grave allegations were made, just like Senator Barry said. This university is reputed for being a very great citadel of learning in Nigeria. And the admission policy in this university has been one of the most revered in this country. Yes, when JAMB started, JAMB was giving provisional admissions in all the universities. During our own time, immediately after WAEC releases its final results for the year, all provisional admissions will lapse within 2 weeks. Anybody who was on provisional admission but failed to get credit in the important courses that will sustain the admission will be sent out of the university. It's not the practice of this university to retain people on provisional admission into first semester, second semester, even first year, second year, third year. So this revelation here is mind-boggling, that about 290 students were offered admission to study medicine and surgery. And along the line, they started swapping courses. Please, this is not the University of Nigeria and Nsukka that I know. And at least 4 of the past vice chancellors of this university are my very good friends. So I want this motion not to be maybe downplayed. We'll need to investigate this allegation. Let's take the motion and the prayers, and then, like the mover of the motion requested, let us invite officials of this university. This thing may be happening in other universities, but this complaint has not come from the other universities the way it has formally come here in this motion. Let us invite officials of the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and JAMB to look at the veracity of this claim that 290 students were left wandering about in the university campus after staying for maybe 1 year or 2 years. I have heard stories of people staying in the university for 4 years without even graduating with a degree, based on discrepancies in the admission policy. Some will come in to read law, finish their program. They will now say that they didn't meet the requirements for admission, and they will be axed out of the university. This thing should not be part of our educational system. So I think to restore the dignity of the University of Nigeria, so that nobody will have the impression that the university has an admission policy that is inhuman, let us get to the root of it quickly and resolve it. This is my submission, Mr. President, and I think it is very important that this is done. If other universities have similar cases, people can bring petition to the Senate, which you can now refer to the Senate Committee on Public Petitions. This one is a special one. 290 students cannot be wandering in a university for about 3-4 years. You start tossing them around. From medicine, you say go to medical rehabilitation or medical laboratory or pharmacology or physiology. Admission is a certain thing. When you are entering a university, you are coming in to study a course with a given time frame. After that, you graduate and move on. This floating admission should be banned. And if this investigation is done thoroughly, we'll be able to get to the root of this matter. Thank you, Mr. President. So I support this motion that investigation needs to be conducted. There's no point playing it around and talking about other universities. When we have similar cases, we can treat them as the petitions come to the Senate. Thank you, Mr. President.
We are for all Nigerians, both in Nigeria and in the diaspora. So, and meanwhile, the names of the other 290 were not listed. So my personal opinion is that even Ms. Chinyenekwe could have could write to the Senate, and then we refer it to our Committee on Public Petitions, and to look, she has the right to do so. Then secondly, we are shaving the head of a man behind his back. The University of Nigeria has a reputation that spans decades and respected internationally. And they have, JAM has its own reputation. So the discussing and particularizing it could tend to give the international community that something is questionable about the certificates from University of Nigeria, which we all respect. It has given birth to so many universities, including the one I went to, which was the University of Calabar. So I think the Latin phraseology applies here, which is odi autem patem. Let the other side be heard. If it is the view of the Senate that we refer the entirety of this petition or this motion, particularly the contents of the prayers, to the 2 committees. One committee on tertiary education, and the second one, committee on public petition, jointly to do a thorough investigation revert to this Senate in 2 weeks so that we can do a holistic job and even invite the Minister of Education to attend to find out whether this kind of practice, if it is occurring, is also occurring in other tertiary institutions. So let us do a holistic job. If it is the view of the Senate that we refer this entirety to the Committee on Tertiary Education and Public Petitions, can we say aye? Those again say nay. The ayes have it. So, thank you, distinguished Senator Nweboyin, for bringing this to the fore. I think it's important that that we correct any wrong that we see.
The President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, brought to the notice of members a presidential communication requesting the confirmation of the Executive Vice Chairman of the National Communications Commission, Aliyu Maida.
In accordance with the provisions of Section 8, subsection 1 of the Nigerian Communications Act 2003, I am pleased to present for confirmation by the Senate the appointment of Mr. Aminu Maida as Executive Vice Chairman of the Nigerian Communications Commission, while hoping that the request will receive the usual expeditious consideration of the Senate. Please accept, distinguished Senate President, the assurances of my highest regards. Yours sincerely, signed, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Other features at plenary include the first reading of 5 bills, among them the bill seeking to amend the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission Act. That is the size of our package on the program. We thank you for watching. Do stay tuned.